So imagine trying to psychoanalyze someone, right? Like you really want to map out how they handle stress or how they process failure.
Right, how they react when they're totally backed into a corner.
Exactly. And usually, you might sit them down for a Rorschach test, show them an ink blot, ask if they see like a butterfly or a skull or whatever.
Where you give them one of those Myers-Briggs questionnaires.
Yeah, you tally up their answers and then you just drop them into a neat little psychological box. But what if the most accurate, like devastatingly precise map of a person's psyche wasn't a clinical test at all?
Which is such a wild concept.
It really is. What if it was, honestly, a deck of children's playing cards?
I mean, it sounds completely absurd on the surface. But when you look at how a person constructs a system of rules or, mechanics to achieve a specific goal, you actually see their entire worldview.
Yeah.
You see their relationship with control, their relationship with time, and, well, with consequence.
And that brings us to the, frankly, incredibly unique document we're looking at for today's deep dive. It's dated April 22, 2026.
Right.
And it presents itself as this psychological reflection, a profile of what the author calls a subpersonality named Tira. But the whole diagnostic tool used to explain her mind is a specific, highly tuned Yugioh deck list.
We're just, stripping away the clinical playbook completely here.
Yeah.
By using a competitive game as a framework, the author allows us to see this personality in motion.
Yeah, reacting to real-time conflict.
Exactly. And the author even sets the stage in the notes with this really evocative visual. They describe the mental backdrop for Tira as this surreal, softly lit library with floating hourglasses.
Wow. Oh.
Yeah, it instantly reflects the deck's whole obsession with time and, reflection.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because even if you, the listener, have never touched a trading card game in your entire life, you really need to stick with us today.
Absolutely.
Our mission isn't to teach you the rules of a card game. This deep dive is about exploring how competitive mechanics serve as this profound metaphor for personal philosophy, emotional control, and, well, this overarching, somewhat haunting concept that everything returns.
Right.
The core theme of Tira's deck is titled Zombie plus Goat Control.
Which is quite the name. And to truly grasp what Tira represents, we have to kind of fundamentally shift our definition of what it means to win a conflict.
Okay, how so?
Well, in most games, and frankly in most human interactions, like arguments, business negotiations, even rush hour traffic.
Oh, definitely rush hour traffic.
Right. The default objective is aggressive victory. You try to overpower the other person, you outspeed them, strike first, establish dominance. But Tira completely rejects that premise.
She doesn't care about aggression at all.
Not at all. Her primary objective is observation.
Yeah.
Followed by just total inevitability.
So to understand Tira, we have to look at the spells and extra deck monsters that define her core signature cards, right?
Yes.
Because these are the tools she uses to manipulate time and form. Let's start with a spell card called Scapegoat. Mechanically, playing this card creates 4 tokens, essentially 4 placeholder creatures on the board.
And they have 0 attack power.
0. They can't do anything offensively. Their entire mechanical purpose is just to stand in the way and protect you from taking damage for a turn or 2. But the philosophy the author attaches to this card in the notes is simply the phrase, give it a moment.
Give it a moment. I love that. It reads like this quiet rebellion against a world that constantly demands instant reactions.
Yeah, everyone wants you to snap back immediately.
Right. When someone attacks you, the instinct is to immediately strike back. Tira plays this card to literally buy time so she can understand the reality of the situation before doing anything else.
She's just observing.
Exactly. And the notes highlight this really profound idea that small, seemingly useless things like these 0 power tokens, they become deeply meaningful later on.
So she's basically saying, I don't need to win this specific second.
Yes, she's communicating, I just need to survive long enough to see the board clearly.
It is the ultimate rejection of panic, which transitions us perfectly into the next core card, a spell called Metamorphosis. This card takes one of your existing monsters, like say one of those weak little tokens, and converts it into an entirely new, powerful creature. And the quote attached to this in the profile is, you're not stuck, you're evolving.
Because nothing in Tira's world is a fixed point. Every single obstacle or seemingly weak resource is just raw material waiting for a catalyst.
It's all potential.
Right. She doesn't look at a weak position and see defeat. She sees the cocoon phase of a much larger strategy.
And what she usually evolves those weak tokens into is basically the crown jewel of her strategy. It's a monster from her extra deck called Thousand Eyes Restrict.
Oh, this card.
Yeah, and her extra deck also includes things like Dark Bolter the Terrible, Ryu Senshi, Fiend Skull Dragon, but when Thousand Eyes Restrict hits the field, it just completely locks down the board.
Everything stops.
Literally, other monsters aren't allowed to attack, they aren't even allowed to change their battle positions, they are frozen. And then, Thousand Eyes Restrict absorbs the opponent's monsters, just takes them off the board and equips them to itself.
What's fascinating here is what that mechanic represents psychologically. Tira summons this entity specifically to pause the game.
Yeah.
Her mantra, according to the notes, is, "We're not moving forward until we understand." She isn't just stopping the opponent's aggressive play, she is halting the momentum of the entire conflict.
Just hitting the brakes.
Yeah, she forces both sides to look at the reality of the situation without all that noise of continuous action.
It honestly makes me think of, like, hitting the pause button during a really heated argument with a partner or a coworker.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
You know when someone is just yelling, trying to overwhelm you with words, and you decide to just look at them calmly and you say absolutely nothing?
Just letting them talk.
Yeah, you refuse to yell back, and eventually they run out of steam. The silence becomes deafening, and it forces them to actually sit in the discomfort of their own behavior.
They have to hear their own echo.
Exactly. That is what Thousand Eyes Restrict does. But, I do have a conceptual issue here.
Okay, what's that?
Well, if her whole posture is this defensive, stalling mentality, if she's just pausing the argument and standing there, doesn't she risk losing all of her own forward momentum? Like, you can't win a race by standing still.
Right. If we view momentum solely as speed, then yes, that would be a vulnerability. But for Tira, stillness is the momentum.
Stillness is the momentum.
Yes. She isn't losing speed. She is turning the opponent's aggressive speed into a disadvantage. Think of a martial artist who uses an attacker's own lunging weight to throw them off balance.
Ah, I see.
When the opponent rushes, they overextend. They burn through their energy and their resources trying to break her stillness. Her stillness becomes this incredibly heavy, oppressive force that the opponent just exhausts themselves trying to move.
Okay, so stillness as a weapon, letting the opponent punch themselves out, that makes sense. But, relying entirely on stalling leaves you vulnerable to the math of the game.
Sure.
Eventually, defenses break. Sometimes the opponent hits hard enough that your monsters are actually destroyed. So how does Tira handle actual loss?
That is where we get into the whole zombie aspect of her mind.
Right, the zombie engine, which basically dictates that destruction and death the graveyard itself is not an end state.
The graveyard, in Tira's psychology, is simply another resource pool. It's a waiting room. Because, look, this is the inevitable reality of any conflict. You will take losses, plans will fail. But Tira's mindset dictates that a loss is never permanent. It's merely a change in location.
To see how this works, we look at her engine of zombie cards. She runs cards like Pyramid Turtle. When this card is destroyed in battle by the opponent, its destruction actively triggers the next step of her plan. It lets her summon another zombie directly from her deck. The philosophy documented here is, death is not an end, it's a transition.
Just think about how liberating that mindset is in a real-world application. Imagine running a business and a major product launch completely fails.
Right. The death of that product.
Most people panic. They view it as a total loss. Tira's psychology views the failure of one plan as the necessary catalyst to bring out the next idea.
Wow.
If you truly believe that every loss automatically triggers your next advantage, you stop fearing failure entirely. You might even welcome it.
And the advantage she usually pulls out is a card called Vampire Lord.
Yeah.
When Vampire Lord is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, it doesn't stay gone. It just comes back to life during your next turn, over and over again.
It's relentless.
And every time it comes back and deals damage, it disrupts the opponent's deck by forcing them to throw away a card. The core quote for Vampire Lord in the notes is honestly chilling. You can't remove what adapts.
It is a statement of terrifying persistence. If you hit it, it breaks apart, reforms, and comes back specifically tailored to dismantle your strategy.
Yeah.
It drains the opponent's physical resources in the game, sure, but more importantly, it drains their cognitive endurance. Having to solve the exact same problem turn after turn, knowing it's just going to return. It's demoralizing.
And she takes that a step further with a spell called Book of Life. This card lets her revive one of her fallen zombies from the graveyard while simultaneously banishing a monster from her opponent's graveyard. So it removes the opponent's card from the game permanently. They can never use it again.
The psychological weight of Book of Life is just immense. Because Tira isn't indiscriminately dragging every past failure back into the present. She executes what we could call a selective resurrection.
Selective resurrection.
Exactly. She looks at the graveyard of her past way, her discarded tools, her broken plans, and chooses precisely the one that matters for the current moment.
Meanwhile, she denies the opponent the ability to rely on their own past.
Yes. She weaponizes her history while erasing yours.
It is this incredibly tight resource looping machine. I mean, she has a 19-monster lineup dedicated to this.
It's a huge toolkit.
Yeah, I'll just run through it quickly. You've got the Zombie Core with Ryu Koki, which cleanly destroys warriors and spellcasters, plus Spirit Reaper. Then there's the Goat and Control package, right? And so Magician of Faith, Morphing Jar, Night Assailant to recycle flip monsters, and then the utility and stability cards. Sangan, Breaker the Magical Warrior, DD Warrior Lady. It's an engine designed to infinitely recycle resources, a concept gamers call recursion.
Right, it's all about loops.
But, okay, wait. I'm looking at the rest of this deck list, and I am genuinely confused by something.
Okay, wait on me.
Everything you just said, everything we've talked about so far is about extreme, careful control.
Right.
It is about patience, stillness, predictable loops. Isn't this just a standard recursion strategy?
Well,
because right here, sitting in the middle of her deck, is a section the notes call the Chaos Layer. She includes a very light touch, just one copy, of a card literally named Chaos Sorcerer. Why on earth would you introduce chaos into a system built entirely on predictability and control?
Right.
It seems like a massive contradiction to her need for control.
It looks like a contradiction until you realize the difference between rigid control and true mastery. Rigid things, walls, dams, inflexible plans, they shatter when they are struck hard enough by an unpredictable force. If Tira's system was completely closed and predictable, a clever opponent could eventually map it out and break it.
So she isn't building a concrete dam?
No, she is bending like a reed in the river. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the inclusion of Chaos Sorcerer, along with flexible control tools like Tsukuyomi for reusing flips, Sinister Serpent for discard loop.
Right, a Sur Priest for clearing tokens.
Exactly, plus Exiled Force and Kaku the Ghost Destroyer. It proves that Tira embraces a controlled chaos. She isn't rigidly fighting the current. She is seamlessly adapting to it. To even play Chaos Sorcerer, you are required to have a balance of opposing forces in your graveyard, specifically light and dark monsters.
That's fascinating.
By incorporating this light touch of chaos, she acknowledges that unpredictability is an unavoidable part of life. Instead of trying to build a wall against the unpredictable, she weaves it directly into her infrastructure.
She builds a margin of error into her own psyche that is incredibly self-aware, which, brings us to the infrastructure itself, the spells and traps.
Right, the glue that holds all these philosophies together.
Exactly. All these monsters, all these ideas of transitioning through failure and controlled chaos, they operate within the boundaries of the remaining 13 spells and 8 traps. In this game, these cards dictate the literal timeline of a match.
They absolutely do.
You've got classic staples like Heavy Storm, Mystical Space Typhoon, Pot of Greed, Graceful Charity, Delinquent Duo. Then you have cards for control flow like Snatch Steal and Book of Moon. And the trap lineup creates this core control and stability. Mirror Force, Torrential Tribute, Call of the Haunted, plus Pressure from Ring of Destruction, Defense with 2 copies of Sakuretsu Armor, and Disruption with Dust Tornado.
They are the laws of physics for the universe Tira is creating on the table. She doesn't play them aggressively to deal damage. She holds them until the exact moment they break the opponent's momentum.
And the notes actually highlight one specific trap card out of her entire defensive lineup. It's called Trap Dust Shoot. The author explicitly states this card fits Tira's awareness theme. Mechanically, it allows you to look at the opponent's hidden hand of cards and send one of their monsters back into their deck before they can even play it.
Let's look at the emotional causality of that mechanic. By looking at their hand, Tira isn't just taking away a piece of cardboard. She is taking away their hope of a surprise.
Oh, wow.
Think about the vulnerability of that moment for the opponent. You are holding your secret plan, waiting for the right time to strike. Tira flips this trap, looks at your hidden thoughts, identifies your best possible future, and quietly removes it.
It induces a feeling of utter helplessness.
Yes, it establishes that she is intimately aware of what you are going to do before you do it.
It is psychological dominance without ever throwing a punch. So how does this entire philosophy play out in real time? The notes actually break Tira's gameplay down into 4 distinct chilling stages.
The 4 stages, right?
Stage 1 is the early game. which is entirely about observation. You set a defensive card, maybe your Pyramid Turtle, Magician of Faith, or your Scapegoat tokens, and you do almost nothing else. You just slow everything down. The guiding quote here is, "You're not reacting, you're watching."
This is pure data gathering.
Yeah.
You let the opponent make the first aggressive moves, not to fight back, but to understand their psychology. How eager are they? How much are they willing to risk early on? You are reading their temperature.
Then comes stage 2, the mid-game. The notes call this controlling the flow. This is where you use Metamorphosis to bring out Thousand Eyes. The zombie engine begins. You start letting your resources get destroyed just to bring out stronger ones. And those Tsukuyomi loops create these tiny, subtle advantages.
It's an accumulation of micro victories. You aren't going for the throat. You're just slowly, methodically tightening the net. You take away a resource here, you stall a turn there.
Which leads to stage 3, the turning point. The notes call this the quiet shift. You activate Book of Life to swing that graveyard advantage. Your Vampire Lord starts constantly recurring, and this is the moment where the opponent realizes they're losing, but they are losing slowly.
And that realization is the gateway to the final stage. Stage 4, the end game.
Inevitability.
Inevitability. At this point, Tira has more resources. She has more recursion, more understanding of the game state than the opponent does. And the notes say something fascinating about this final phase. You don't finish. You arrive at the win.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. Think about the sheer terror of this from the other side of the table.
Oh, it'd be awful.
You sit down expecting a back-and-forth battle. Right, a test of strength. But fighting Tira is like being placed in a room where the door is locked, the drain is plugged, and water is just slowly, quietly filling the room from the floorboards.
This is exactly what it feels like.
At first, your feet are wet, but you're still throwing punches, still trying to execute your aggressive plan. But the water keeps rising. You don't realize you're drowning until the water is at your chin, and your arms are too tired to swing anymore. There's no dramatic final blow, no explosion. You just slowly run out of air, defeated by the absolute certainty of the rising water.
It is a brilliant, terrifying masterclass in shifting from a purely reactive, observational state to a state of crushing inevitability. The opponent burns themselves out trying to punch the water.
Yeah.
Tira simply allows the natural consequences of their overextension to play out. She doesn't have to forcefully defeat you. She just has to survive your initial panic until you defeat yourself through exhaustion.
And that brings us to the final section of this document, simply titled, The Feeling of Tira. It basically synthesizes the entire emotional core of this deep dive.
Right.
The notes describe the energy she projects as calm, thoughtful, and slightly eerie. The ultimate realization for the opponent sitting across from her is summarized in one devastating thought. I've been losing for a while. I just didn't notice.
This raises an important question for you, listening to this right now. If we pull this out of the realm of trading cards and look at your daily life, how do you approach conflict?
Yeah.
How do you approach learning a new, difficult skill or navigating a crisis at work? Are you constantly on the offensive? Are you aggressively trying to finish tasks, beat problems into submission, and just rush to the end result?
Which is what most of us do.
Right. Or are you capable of setting up systems like Tira does, where you can simply arrive at the win?
Yeah.
Systems built on careful observation, extreme patience, and the deliberate recursion of your past knowledge.
It changes everything when you stop trying to sprint to the finish line and start focusing on just understanding the board state, to just, give it a moment.
Absolutely.
And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today, building on this idea of the graveyard. Think about your own past failures. The discarded ideas, the projects that completely fell apart, the arguments you lost. We usually treat those things as dead and gone, things to be ashamed of and buried.
We want to forget them.
Exactly. But if we view those past failures as our own personal graveyard, what would happen if we adopted Tira's philosophy? Instead of trying to outrun our past mistakes and pretend they didn't happen, what if we viewed them not as an endpoint, but as an essential recurring resource? What if every failure is just waiting in the dark, waiting for the right moment, waiting for you to use your own book of life to transform those old dead mistakes into your greatest, most inevitable advantage?